All right.
Behind the scenes peek.
Oh, welcome. It's so good to see so many people coming to enjoy our WeHo Reads program tonight. I am Cody Cisco of Bookswell, and I am so thrilled to have Brian Sonia-Wallace, the City of West Hollywood Poet Laureate, who will be hosting tonight and leading us through. So Brian, take it away.
Hi all, thank you so much for being here, and I'm so excited for this moment and this conversation. It's a convening across, I think, 8 different time zones of poets representing a ton of different identities and generations, and all coming here as part of WeHo Reads in West Hollywood, where it is currently National Poetry Month. They did a whole proclamation. Here it is. Hooray, hooray. And really excited to kick things off. We are going to start today in Nashville with Simba the Poet. Simba Aoki will be sharing some of his work.
Hello, beautiful people. Can you all hear me? Perfect. I would like to excuse any noise in the background. There's a beautiful 3-month-old baby in my home. So if she screams, that's okay, because a baby's laughter is nothing but joy. Anyway, for Christ, you know? So I have a few poems for you all. I like to give a sort of content warning advisory before. Unfortunately, you know, I speak from my experience, so there's a little bit of talk about the death of Black and brown folks, trans folks, but I promise, like, there is joy in everything that I write. Oh, also religion. I love to play with spirituality, so yes, I like to respect folks before, so you all have time to leave if you need be and come back. Yeah, so first poem is called Letter to My Unborn Son. A letter to my unborn son. Your father was never really son, never encouraged to be a man, so forgive him if he forgets. Excuse him for having feminine tendencies, son, know that he is still a man. That he could teach you to be man, your father probably feels like martyr to bigoted hands, no survival, and confidence, no oppression, and strength like holding his ground, and refusing to take knee to those who want to beat him, bloody him, blunt force. Heartbeat the color of weeping flags, son, your mother talks about you often. Attempts to convince me of how great I can be, but son, I must admit, that the curve in my skeleton has me scared. Terrified that you won't see the same reflection as I, my hips hold a bowl full of spilling resentment for twisted creators, son, a womb holds our existence. Curves molds your being. How can I teach you that masculinity is never threatened by the touch of queen, only strengthens in feminine presence? My mama was all the man that she could be in feminine flesh. Taught me how nurture could build king. Had a touch like golden bricks, she held mountains, passed them down to me. Son, I'm looking for answers in you too. Like, would you still look up to me if I cried in front of you? Inside, still able to feed life, breast, caged estrogen legs, thick with a woman's experience. Would you still want to be like me if it helps? I played sports in grade school. Before, when I was 10, I fought 2 dudes at the same time in one. See, it's proof that I could teach you to hold your own son. Is it okay if I'm a little different? Can I teach you of gender roles and then shatter its existence? Would you mind if I didn't mind if your mother made more than me, if I taught you that Black men can be womanish too? Or does that make me too feminine? Or is being afraid of being feminine not masculine enough? Son, that would tell you that I'm not masculine enough, would demonize my existence, attempt to prove to you that my curves are still there, sprouting like dying roses home. The cherry blossom scented memories, be prepared, because they will try to take my life. And you will watch your mother and grandmother worry for me because I refuse to hide my identity, still counting how many resembling my being have been killed in the past 3 months. And in 2017, Alfonso Watson, Jaquarius Holland, China Gibson, Kiki Collier, Misha Caldwell, bullet pierced their beauty, attempted to mock their bones, Sierra McElveen, stabbed to death, cried songs with the insects in the bayou, skin burned for its last piece of acceptance, Two-Spirit, Jamie Lee, wounded arrow. I gotta be truthful. There's nothing stopping me from being next, other than my motivation to live for you, son. It's okay if you're a little confused. Know that I will always be honest, son. If you are a daughter, I will not bring you home in a pink onesie. We'll let you pick out your own toys, allow you to express all feminine and masculine qualities however you see fit to my unborn child. I'm sorry I always initially referred to you as son, I guess, since I was never able to be one. I feel the need to live through you never felt what a Black father meant to a Black son to my unborn child. Regardless of my femininity and masculinity, I will always be your father. And that's the first poem. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Yeah, so I'll go right into the next one, unless we're just going through them, right? Just going through our poem. Cool. Thank you so much. So I will go to the next one. This next one is a new piece. So excuse me if I stumble, but I really wanted to share this one with you all. Everyone can still hear me, right? Thumbs up so you can still hear me. Perfect. So this poem is called Black Church. For Tony, for Tiana, for Remy, for EJ. I'm terrified for my daughter to ask me who God is when someone tells her that God loves everybody except her daddy. When they tell her that God will allow someone to be stomped to death for looking like me. I have always been told that my church is in the home of Black folk and hymns and great grandmama's kitchen. Hymns start to sound something like a curse when a tongue gets sharp enough to carve you out of a lineage. My church sit in a notch on the Bible belt, hot like leather, like it's burning, like a cross in my great grand's front yard in Mississippi. Church is supposed to feel like safe belt. Mine feel like noose. Black folks love they people till they people look like me. But ask me how it feels to house bones that don't belong to you. A body there for someone else's convenience, knowing that your blood has a soul that will lay bed on a body that lies to its reflection. My people will be mad for being burned, but will beat a trans body like it's for spectator sport. Sound familiar? I've been begging my Black church to love me for quite some time, but my church circles around my body like seance, has pronounced me dead and damned before knowing my name, would rather pray away my existence and forget that I am Black, uses my blood as a scapegoat for their sins, pours holy water down my throat in hopes that I will burn from the inside. My church ain't no better than white folk because they too see me as less than human. Will break every chain except the one around my ankles, but don't you think that I want to be free too? And that's that poem. I promise y'all, like there's a lot of like Black joy in my life. I promise that I'm a happy being, but unfortunately these are our stories and you gotta be uncomfortable because I'm uncomfortable living it sometimes. So we're gonna have to feel it together. But yes, it's all joy at the end because super proud, super unapologetic to be me, but I gotta talk about it. This next poem, I still got time, yes. Let's see. One of my favorite poets is Amiri Baraka. Love, 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 love that being. And one of my favorite poems is called Dope. So I wrote a poem in response to that one. The sun shined ever so beautifully over the surface of minority bodies. The sun ever so graciously fed the soil above the surface of minority bodies. Minority's body, so it must be the devil. The privileged mistake minority for inferior bodies, so it must be the devil. Our slave travels via homicide on the way to freedom, so it must be the devil. They kill girls in high school bathrooms. They kill brown boys on playgrounds. They mock sunsets, set my son's time, and it must be the devil. It must be the devil. It must be the devil, because God don't look like this. God don't look like grieving sunrises, don't smell like plague, don't taste like salt, don't sound like trials in Salem. They want our kids. It must be the devil. Her soul went viral. Saw it running from her tainted body. Witness hella witnesses, witness her suffering. I didn't see God, so it must be the devil. I saw his soul reluctant to touch the sky. It wasn't so sure if God would be there. They don't believe pastor no more, so it must be the devil. They follow pastor. They forgot that God was the leader, so it must be the devil. It must be the devil. Whoa, whoa. They took Sandra, tried to give her back, showed us with the lights, left her with a life, left her, gave us her mugshot. Thought we would forget how beautiful the Black woman is. See, Black don't crack, but my Black hurt. It must be the devil. We don't know if it ain't viral, so it must be the devil. Mass murder, mass murder. Whoa, it must be the devil. Orlando, 49. My brother, my sister, one shooter, one body, no soul, no home, caused terror, no terrorist, just lost. Who thought it must be the devil? The youngest one was younger than me, so it must be the devil. God, must we all die before we see heaven? I mean, if the devil works more, I pray that you work bigger. Whoa, whoa, it must be capitalism. And that's that poem. That is that poem. Yeah, so that's that poem. I think, do I have time for one more, or is that my time?
Go in, Simba.
Go in, Simba. Okay. Yes, like I said, there's a lot of religious and like spiritual undertones to my poems. I'm not religious at all, but I live in the South. I live in Tennessee, Bible Belt. So my life and my experience is super influenced by religion. So yeah, it's a lot of that in my pieces. This last poem following that is called Savior. Sometimes gunshots and prayers are one and the same. Both cried by victim and victimizer, hands clutched in preparation to seek salvation, no precise destination for delivery. If a gunshot is sounded off in the middle of Jefferson Street and no one is around to hear it, does a shooter still exist? If a prayer is cried out in the middle of a courtroom, does God distinguish between the messenger? I held a bullet in my hands like a Bible verse once, found it on the sidewalk, dropped to my knees to pick it up and wondered who it missed, kept it secret in my palms like a prayer or a wish. I've noticed that a bullet and a holy message can reach the body in the same amount of seconds. Have you ever tried to decipher the soul's language of tongue while exiting the body? It sounds the same in the street as it does, and it sounds the same in the church as it does under a street light. Sounds the same after an officer's command as it does after a fight for survival. I don't know who to pray to anymore. Don't know what protection feels like anymore from an officer, a God, or a gun. And that's that piece. Thank y'all so much. You all are beautiful people. I appreciate y'all for allowing me into this space, for sharing this space with me, and can't wait to hear more. Love y'all.
Thank you so much, Simba. And yeah, people could not hold their love in the Q&A. You have some love already. People are dropping it. They're not questions. They're just answers. And you gave them. So excited. Her soul went viral. Ryka, I'm interested to, I mean, just the resonances I think are going to be really fun through this reading. We'll pass things over. We're going to continue to head east before bringing it back home. The next poet who we have coming to the virtual stage is live from a dorm room right now in New Haven, Connecticut. Oh, there you are, Ava. Ava Dadvand actually is from Los Angeles originally, and I met through the Get Lit program, and now is moving and shaking on the East Coast, and I'm so excited to hear her work. Take it away, Ava.
Thank you, Brian. So I've got 4 poems ready today, and as a general warning, my writing tends to deal heavily in mortality, and one of these poems in particular with suicide, but I'm gonna save that one for the third one. So just a heads up. My first poem is called The Mosque in Newton, Massachusetts. I am Muslim in the way that I call Muslims my brothers, and that if I ever had to pray to a God, I think it would be Allah, although I'm not sure because I really like gospel music. And my atheist father wouldn't want me to believe in God. He doesn't even let us say bless you when he sneezes. The only mosque I have ever been to is the electrolysis table at an overpriced surgery center in Newton, Massachusetts. I am Muslim in the way that I have never prayed until that day when Allah in his infinite mercy shot lidocaine through my scrotum, burning me like Moses's bush. In Iran, we say of the chills, the angel of death has passed through your body. Ezrail az pahum rad shud. So too did Ezrail reach into my soul and throttle me against the table. My mask slid off my face, my stomach left, my head ached, and I wailed, I am going to faint. This is the punishment for non-believers. I pray, Allah, in your infinite mercy, please get me through this. Please make it stop. I want my mommy. I want my girlfriend. I want to repent. I will bow before you. I will wear hijab and learn Farsi and fast during Ramadan, and will do all 5 of the salah or namaz or whatever they're called. Please, I pray to you, end my sufferings, inshallah. Hear my prayer and the injection stop. I did not stop rattling for another 5 minutes. Ezrail lingered in the chambers of my heart, rattling around, but eventually I was free. the remnants of my mortal body left to be desecrated by hours of thermolytic probes. I've never prayed before. Once I lit candles and hoped to the cosmos that I would get into college, and it worked, but only because I worked, not like in Newton. To pray is to throw yourself into the hands of God, to surrender yourself. I think I will do it more often. I am Muslim in the way that if I had to claim allegiance to one religion, it would probably be Islam, because Allah is the only God who has bailed me out. Next Tuesday, I will drive to Newton again to pray, to build a mosque. Thank you. Going right into the second one, this one is called Broken Boy. You find me, your mother, cowering, shivering in a dank walk-in closet, trying to put back together the pieces of her baby, shattered to bits on the floor before me like a plate thrown against a wall. My hands are cut from the shards, soaking my childhood memories in blood. Daughter, please help me bring back the boy who used his own two hands to make all his toys play soccer. Chopstick holders and Marvel action figures would come together on the carpeted floor, kick the Tootsie Roll wrapper around, aim between the bedposts. I want him back. He did not need to die. Which fragments do I need to stick together to bring back my boy? If I line this bone with glue, I can rebuild his arm, watch him scribble differential equations in his 8th grade notebooks, then reattach his eyes and see the tears fill the margins. If I paste this dust here, we can remake his hair. Remember how he colored it blue and refused to re-dye it brown when the principal told him to? Now his hair is ash. Your brother was too good for this world. He was a simple boy who wore Legend of Zelda shirts and cargo shorts, and not many people talked to him on the playground, but he got by. He played his video games and watched the ants scurry off into their crevices. Your brother was like an ant. In what ways? I'm not exactly sure how, but he was small and delicate, and I squashed him. I pushed my foot into his back and watched his body break beneath me, and I shot him, and I choked him, and I drowned him, and I cleaned his head clean off with the guillotine. I killed him through, and I miss him. Daughter, I miss him. When I killed my boy, it felt like the right thing to do. I threw his mangled body in the trash and began taking my hormones, grew my breasts, raised my voice, wore my skirts, got my surgeries, and it all felt like the right thing to do. And it was. I don't regret it, but did I need to get rid of him? Did I need to kill him? We could have lived on together, shared the same body, like we did before I started hormones. But it's too late. I broke my boy. Let's go, daughter. Help me dig a grave for the pieces of my baby. Thank you. This third piece is a lot more speculative. It's called The Terracotta Army. Every week, I kill the me from the week before, watch them fall dead into the floor, add them to the necropolis, and raise up another. One day, I will run out of me's to kill, and I will die. But I cannot bear to be the same person for more than 7 days at a time. I do not remember living in Ohio. I do not remember middle school. I do not remember what I did yesterday, who I saw, who I was. My closet is populated with rows of little me's standing perfectly still, waiting to be tapped into life. Every Sunday, I open the closet door and take one off the shelf. The rest in the row slide forward like snacks in a vending machine. I set her on the hardwood floor of my dorm and she grows to life like one of those just add water toys. Then I die. It isn't bloody. It's actually very seamless. I just crumble into the ground and sift between the floorboards, reforming again into the same minifigure underground. Below my room is a catacomb of clay where each me lies dormant and peaceful. It's a very transactional process. I die and I am replaced, living only in week-long increments. One day, I will run out of terracotta figures, and then I will die. But it should be a while. There are thousands. I've never bothered to count how many. Maybe I'll die when I'm 80 or 70, somewhere in that ballpark. That's long enough for me. In 9th grade, when I wanted to kill myself, I started taking soldiers off the shelves and throwing them at the wall. But I only got through a few before I realized I still wanted to live. Even still, in my childhood bedroom, there's a dent in the wall coated in brownish orange dust right where my skulls cracked against the wall and broke. I don't want to kill myself anymore, but I have on occasion thrown a few out my window. I never heard them shatter. I wish I could be alive for more than a week at a time, but what is transitioning if not dying once a week and being born anew? Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, was buried with an army of over 8,000 life-size sculptures of terracotta soldiers that stand guarding his mausoleum. He did not live for 8,000 weeks, nor will I, but he was buried safe, and I will be buried safe when I am buried among my many selves. Thank you. And my last poem is called The Brown Trans Woman on the Voyager Spacecraft. File me down into vinyl and ring me around a record. Spray paint me gold and I will tell the extraterrestrials about our world, about my world, about the history of ska and my heartbreaks. I will tell the inhabitants of other planets about T for T. It's like a binary star merger. We take turns overwhelming one another with our gravity. I pull her into me when she cancels her bottom surgery. She welds to my chest, fusing hydrogen and helium in the core of my arms until we burn out. Send me into the sky with Stravinsky and Chuck Berry. I am a brown trans woman, meaning I belong to nothing. Put me in space where the aliens might make a home for me. Maybe they'll set me on their high-tech record players and dig the needle into my brain's grooves, scraping out stories like the muck beneath the strings of my bass. Let them clean me out and extract my histories. When you play the golden record on the Voyager spacecraft, at 4 seconds in, you will hear me say hello in ancient Greek. You will hear volcanoes and chimpanzees and tractors and a Morse code message saying per aspera ad astra, through hardships to the stars. And then you will hear about an hour of my brainwaves. They took me to a lab and hooked my skull up to a computer, told me to think whatever I wanted the aliens to know about our planet Earth. I thought about transmisogyny and ancient civilizations and ranch dressing on pizza and butch lesbians and love and Herodotus and the voiceless glottal fricative and Better Call Saul and my father and electrolysis and binary star systems and elephants and gold and circles. And then I remembered I was supposed to be sending a message to the aliens. So I focused my mind and thought the one thing I wanted to think, the one thing I wanted the aliens to know. I am a brown trans woman, and so I am often invisible on my planet, Earth. So I volunteered to leave and never come back. Please keep my memory alive among your kind. Then Bach's Brandenburg Concerto No. 2 will sound me off, and I will drift away like space dust. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ava. Oh my goodness. And the segues that y'all are doing are unreal. We've already entered space. But before we go deeper into it, I'm going to pass things back over to the team at WeHo Reads to talk a little more about the programming that we have coming up and what's going on with the city, and welcome you all. So go ahead, Cody, take it away.
Wow, Simba, Ava, we've traveled so far and I can't wait to see where we'll go next. And this is thrilling. I'm trying to get back in my body right now. So we're so happy. Bookswell is so happy to be producing the WeHo Read series this year. In honor of tonight's event, we're going to make a donation to the Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund, and we invite our audience to do the same. I will put that link in the chat very soon. But I also want to thank the city for making this possible with their generous arts funding. Obviously, they made a great decision when they made Brian the Poet Laureate, because there's no one working harder to spread the arts right now in WeHo. And I also need to thank our sponsors. So we've been very pleased at the generosity of the UCLA Extension Writers Program, which it provides classes and courses to writers throughout Los Angeles, which is fantastic. Also, Poets and Writers has made a mini grant today as well. So there's a lot of groundswell for this community. And we have a few media partners, including bookshop.org, the LA Review of Books, and Book Soup. I will be putting a link in the chat where you can go buy the fabulous books that our writers have written and published. And with that, I am going to transfer it over to Mike from the City of West Hollywood Arts Division. Thank you, Mike, and to everyone over there who is making this possible.
Thank you, Cody. As Cody said, I'm Mike Che. I work for the City of West Hollywood's Arts Division. We want to, of course, thank Cody for doing such an excellent job in producing this year's WeHo Read series. And of course, thank you to all our panelists who are fabulous. Thank you for sharing your poetry and your thoughts tonight. It's amazing. This is part of the city's official Transgender Day of Visibility, which is extended to a week worth of visibility activities. And it's also one of our National Poetry Month events, which is curated by our wonderful poet laureate, Brian Sonia-Wallace. You have probably noticed the banners on the street honoring poets. And yeah, it's just a wonderful thing that we can support that. I did want to acknowledge that the City of West Hollywood is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Gabrielino Tongva and Gabrielino Kizh peoples. The Tongva and the Kizh are the traditional caretakers of Tovangar, which includes Los Angeles County, Riverside County, West San Bernardino County, parts of Orange County, as well as the 4 Southern Channel Islands. We also acknowledge that this is merely, a land acknowledgement is merely a first step, and we recognize that the city has its shortcomings, and these are small gestures that become meaningful only when coupled with authentic relationships and informed action. I do welcome all of you to acknowledge the ancestral people of whatever lands that you are coming from. You can find those on a website called native-land.ca. Of course, we also want to thank the City Council of the City of West Hollywood. They are the ones who provide the funding. They realize how important arts is to bringing people together and for our well-being. And we have one of our council people here who wants to say a few words to everybody. Councilmember John Erickson, if you'd like to welcome our group, please, you have the floor.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. And every time I come on one of these events, I say to myself, I cannot buy any more books. And I purposely say that to myself, knowing I will violate that pact I try to take. But I have been watching and experiencing everything that's been going on. Actually, from my office at Planned Parenthood, that's my day job. And so I'm still here. I feel like I never leave anymore, but I wouldn't miss one of these events for the world. I am truly in the house of such incredible individuals. You have brought me to the moon and the stars and back, and it's so exciting to see how this has been curated, but especially how we're highlighting our transgender and gender nonconforming communities and what we are doing as a city, but then ultimately what you all doing through your beautiful work. Thank you so much, Brian, for curating and being a part of this, and for all the work you do for poetry and the arts. I agree, Cody. I don't think there's anyone working harder to make the arts in West Hollywood more out there than Brian, but specifically each and every one of our panelists, you are the joy that we need more in this world. That's exactly how we should be doing in the light of all of these horrible, horrific things that go on. I look to each and every one of you to make me smile, but to uplift the souls of those that we can't see, but those that we know our words touch no matter what. So thank you all. I'm truly in awe. I'm going to Book Soup again later tomorrow or Friday, and I will be purchasing things, but most importantly, thank you for being the best part of this city, and thank you for bringing just a little bit more happiness to the world when we need it so much more. So with that, I'm going to go back away and watch you all, and I hope you all are safe and healthy. Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much, John. Fun fact, John totally also writes poems secretly. I've even read one. He comes back on camera for that. Yay, thank you so much. That's our official city business. Let's get back to some poems. We're gonna keep pushing east across the Atlantic to Galway, which I'm reliably informed is in Ireland, not the UK. But our next poet, Josie, lives in Edinburgh and originally is from Orkney, and just this last year published this incredible book, Deep Wheel Orcadia, which I'm hoping she will grace us with some of the work from that text. Josie, take it away.
Hello, hi everyone. It is 2:30 in the morning where I am, so forgive me if I'm just a little bit dreamy with you this evening, okay? It's such a pleasure to be with you all. Thank you to Simba and Ava for your readings, and thank you to Ryka for the reading to come. I'm really looking forward to this. I'm from the Northern Isles of Scotland. So you go all the way to the top of the island of Great Britain, and then you go over the sea a bit, and that's me. And we have our own language, the Orkney language. It's part of the broader Scots language family. It's one of the 3 languages of Scotland: English, Scots, and Gaelic. And this book is written in that language. So I'm going to be reading to you in a language that you're not familiar with. It's a language related to English, so you might pick up on bits of it and follow bits of it. And I'm going to do 2 or 3, seeing on how we go with time. And at least the first 1 or 2, I'll give you the Orkney version, and then I'll give you the English version. So that's what's about to happen. A little bit of setup for you here. So this is my book, Deep Wheel Orcadia, and it's a science fiction love story, I suppose, set on a very small space station around a very large gas giant a few hundred years in the future. And it's a love story between 2 characters called Astrid and Darling. That's the name of the leads. And I'm going to read you a couple of poems about their experiences together on this space station. I think that's enough setup for you. So this first poem, they are watching a display across the surface of the gas giant, a display of mysterious entities called lights. And like I said before, I'm giving this to you in the Orkney, and then I'm giving it to you in the English, okay? Darlene and Astrid watch a light stour. Darlene is greeting. I've never, she says, I've never. And Astrid kens, but cannot decide. Seeing the stour of lights, the whips, the redriving and goud glasks, the skyring dancers over the curve of a roiling world. The Dylan, the breath, the lithy, the pace, the dunt as the planet braid link work go lights together, sways in a stark streak over the lip of sight. Whether or not to say, aye, but I mind when I were peedy they were more. Darling and Astrid watch a light storm. Darling is weeping. I've never, she says, I've never. And Astrid knows, but can't decide. Seeing the storm strife strain speed dust of lights, the gust darst twist attacks, the red wrench rip breaking and gold glimpse gleam puff thrills scares, the gaudy shining dancers over the curve of a roiling world, the dim fade dying, the breath, the lull-gap path, the peace, the shock chants strike as the planet-wide link-work of lights as one swerves, swings, sways in a thick, violent streak over the edge of sight, whether or not to say, yes, but I remember, no, reflect, will, when I was little, there were more. I come from a place where the effects of climate change are being felt very immediately and very quickly, with the change in the bird colonies and the change in the fish migration patterns that are part of the life I live in. And I think I spend a lot of time with the birds on the cliffs. And I think a lot about how the species have changed in the years that I've lived. And the number of birds has changed in a very dramatic way in the years that I lived. So it was a sort of connection about how that might play out in different ways. This next one, our heroes, our leads, Astrid and Darling, are taking a walk on a little moon that orbits the gas giant I mentioned earlier. And it's a moon in which there are human-built structures that have been abandoned. So that's the context for you for this one. Astrid tax Darling te a man. They step into a bracket dome. A the poly tin for the earth and most of the twangs and lifted back to space to big more bolus and wheels when the station was growing. Darling leans into Astrid, touching through 7 layers of wax and clays, and looks up at flower moons. Or is it din? I see why they gave up building here. It's gorgeous, but I'm sick already. It's all too fast. Faster is what? Folk is moving faster on Mars relative to the centre. But then I couldn't see, and I stayed on the ground. So perhaps her arms round Astrid's waist and kicks off into space. They flee a fair piece. Their tethers stretch. Darling goal dance. Astrid, quiet, flees them down. Dunno, she says. Folk do that way, but we just can. Folk do. Just can. Now, watch. Arcadia turns into view, and the yacht in, and 5 and 6 more minutes. The Turlin mathematics is a dose more as Darling can comprehend. For Asha was 4 years sailing curves closer to the galactic centre. She kens now who fast is fast and still, and who the station spinning, pinned thick-wise between planet and star, the trio them a godless grand and trig triangle, fast and still, is now and I the only rest. Astrid takes Darling to a moon. They step into a broken, rubbish, ruined dome. All the plastic polymer taken from the roof and most of the structoral strains as well. Lifted back to space to construct more bolas and wheels when the station was growing. Darling leans into Astrid, touching through 7 layers of spacewalk clothes, and looks up at 4 moons. Or is it down? I see why they gave up building here. It's gorgeous, but I'm sick already. It's all too fast. Faster than what? People move faster on Mars relative to the center, but then I couldn't see. And I stayed on the ground. She cover bundles her arms around Astrid's waist and kicks off into space. They fly a good place distance apart while their tethers stretch. Darling, yell, laugh, roars. Astrid, quiet, flies them down. Don't, she says. People die that way, but we just know. People die. Just know. Now, watch. Orcadia turns into view, and the gas giant, and 5 and 6 more moons. The turn, twist, whirl, spinning mathematics is far more than Darling can comprehend, for all she was 4 years sailing closer to the galactic center. She knows then how fast fixed is fast fixed, and still fixed secret silent, and how the station spinning pinned a specific distance between planet and star, all 3 making a very godless, great big and neat, brisk, complete triangle. Fast fixed and still fixed secret silent is now and always the only rest. So I'm going to read one more for you. This time I'm just going to do it in the Orkney version, partly for time, and partly as those of you that speak languages other than English know, it's a bit of a pain to always be translating yourself. And part of the purpose of this book was to take a very small language that not that many folks speak, and give it a kind of galactic scale that it doesn't often get. But the book is published, and the book contains both the Orkney and the English versions. And last week we just published the audiobook version as well, which you can find in all your audiobook stuff. So if you like my reading of it, you can hear me read it again in both the Orkney and the English versions too. So in this last poem, Darlene, who is a visitor to this space station, Orcadia, is going on a trip into the atmosphere of the gas giant, being taken by a character called Olaf, who runs boats into the ship's boats into the gas giant, and strange things are happening there, and the lights that we were watching earlier are starting to rebel in their own way. So this is another sort of slightly mystical scenario, and it's the last one I'll do, and I'll just do it in the Orkney, and maybe you'll have tuned your ears into the ways it works. Darling, as you might have guessed, speaks English rather than Orkney because she's a visitor. Darlene pays Olaf for a hurl. I'm interested, she says, in who you work. Olaf is docent, hanging between blatness, twartiness, and his own restless work for the boats and the lights. He kinda wants to tell everything to somebody, but does not ken what like a body she is, but is feared, but does no want to disappoint, but is prude, but is feared, and so says, oh, yes, looking out, and nothing more. The yawl sails out the dock with fearful quiet. Darlene's pied him though, and was no born to wall for come to twart the galaxy afoot learning something about Tyson a fever. She looks fair less for the suspicion and more of the desire. She spears him slaw and hooly, piece and piece, leaving space to look at space. Draws out the bit wittens here and there, and who to steer and who to look, and what to watch and what to ken the great yachtins do so danger spy. So when Olaf says what do the name, and drops the drive for the yacht to attend to putter, she does no spear right away and does no make a panshite, but looks out where he looks and waits. Upon the yacht and afore them the lights is biggen a face. There is no another word. There 2,000-3,000 points so light biggen a face, the size of a man. Old, long beard, appen, puckered, mouth appen, and Russian for it. The god swallows the yawl. As dark, nae lights, a notion of speed or white, and then they spread into the stars, out the pug of the planet. Olaf screens blusk blue, sprout steady, he hurls them into orbit, a hint, Orcadia. Darlene's grip relaxes. She's clear her sits, shining old black poly, 10 white lines down either side. She hosts. That doesn't usually happen, she says. I thought the mood to a smile, and Olaf replies, no. Okay, that was me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your kind attention. I'm looking forward now to Ryka's reading and into the conversation after. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Josie. Thank you for bringing your work, for bringing a minority language into this and contesting the hegemony of English a little bit. So exciting. And now that we've been to space and to the outer reaches of Scotland, we're going to bring things home with our final reader, Ryka Aoki, who is a light and a beacon to the literary community in Los Angeles. The floor is yours.
We're going to end up in Temple City when we're done, just letting you all know. So this is, we're bridging science fiction and poetry, and that's not something people usually think go together. And yet, as you heard from Josie, the prose can be and can be so poetic, and it's a lot more, there's more of a continuum than you would think. There's much more that's in common. How can one not look at the stars and not think poetically, right? So so I'm going to start. I want to introduce everything, front load everything, because I'm going to go from one book to the next. When you see this book, Why Dust Shall Never Upon the Settle Upon the Soul, I'm going to be reading poetry, and it's going to I'm going to be reading a passage, and it's going to be autobiographical. When you see this book, Light from Uncommon Stars, I'm going to be going into a story where there's a cursed violinist. Her name is Shizuka Satomi, and her soul she sold her soul to the devil. She's trying to get it back. She needs 7 souls because, you know, hell shall be avenged sevenfold. And the 7th soul is this person named Katrina, who is a trans runaway. We're coming into a scene where she's a violinist with wild amounts of natural talent, but because she's trans, she's never played in public. She's in YouTube. She's really trying to figure that out right now. So when I start going from here, I'm going to go, and then I'm going to continue here. And I just want people just to listen to the music of the language. Just, you know, I don't know if I'm going to, you know, I think we all have, you know, I'm just feeling, wow, there's just been so much music, and I just want to share a little bit of mine. It's just been a blessing to read with Simba the Poet and with Ava and with Josie. So here we go with that. What can one do when brilliant friends who remain brilliant leave? The Egyptian astrologer incanting psalms of forgotten souls, gone. The space-time composer with pocket universe full of beat-matched LEDs, away. The Enlightenment weaver threading certain and unfallen yarns, never to look back. What can one do when those who taste prophecy in a teaspoon feel symphonies in Van Nuys, hear colors amongst coldest February gray, at my pronouns find nothing worth another thought? Grab the mic, cue the karaoke, because what could this be but a song? By now, I was supposed to have mall walked into arthritic elderhood. I was supposed to be Tia Rika, perched upon a padded chair to speak lovingly of clubs like Arena and Fuck and Fang, the downtown loft with the best cocaine, Peanuts, where Sinead O'Connor hid between an inside wall and her outside bodyguard. I should be talking of cinematic and illusions and drag shows at the old Queen Mary, cutting lines of the hardest house as the gorgeous one danced or sipped vodka tonics or gave head in lime green restroom stalls. Of how strobe lights knew how to stop at the makeup and glitter to leave us weary as the dead morning streets when the mockingbirds sang and the battered pickup trucks came to stack the LA Express kiosks with free tranny ads to remind us there was someplace yet to fall. Never expected to wake to school boards banning more books. 6 sisters refusing their meds. Never expected to have to revisit the mucus the wasting, the blindness, the heart-lung gurgles of struggling through one last hopeless night, the guilty final wish that she would just die. Who would have thought survival might rest upon how long one holds her melody, her sobriety, her breath? Slam faces, slam doors, a cold KFC bucket, some coleslaw someone pulled from a dumpster. It gets better. What's that supposed to mean? Might Hello Kitty sing? A mother cry? Would a father even miss the Disneyland daughter he hadn't seen since she was supposed to be his boy? We must remember transgenders who simply wanted to be themselves. Well, she was cosmic headscarves, tap dance fingertips, and origami eyes. She was satin camisoles, bedsheet corsets, flowers, cards, a hospice lobby for those too courageous to walk inside. There was nothing simple about her or her or her or her. Bless those who disown their sons, yet say they listen to the same punk rock as they always have. Bless those whose children fled on a nighttime Greyhound bus, yet still bake cookies with raisins instead of chocolate chips. May God help those proper Presbyterians who kicked out their daughters, whose NPR memberships lead to nights discussing the oppressed people of the day, and how it's maddening but not realistic to demand justice for another generation or two or three. Light a candle, loop a ribbon. For in a world without runaways, cast-offs, and queers, who shall redeem the rope, the razors, and the cans of gasoline? After life comes death, and after death comes the community memorial service. And after the community memorial service comes the HIV questionnaire. Then some grad student discards the personal comments and performs t-tests on the numbers that remained. A null hypothesis, a grant proposal, a new coffee maker for the office, 4 miles south, bulletproof windows, 2-for-1 pizzas, cash to go, $1 Chinese food. And the scholars go, I am sure, so sure that I can assure you for sure that surely you are not sure who you are. And the best way to ensure who you are, I am sure, is for you to be sure you are sure that until I can be sure you are sure who you are, you surely can't be sure you are sure. So don't say you are sure, because surely I am sure that you can't be sure. Meanwhile, on the streets, it's time for the white folks to get authentic and start channeling, we shall overcome. Invoke the right Frida, quote the right Audre Lorde, to shake things up, to organize, to close one's eyes and rightly fantasize of a favorite genderqueerish hottie with a dancer's ass, chestnut thighs and dreads and high cheekbones. Auto-tuned in search of food trucks, riding Dayglow fixies for anarchy and fair trade Americanos, yet all consumed to get real, to get hard, to get laid. Ha, revolution, blood sport, because dead queers are easier to pray to because they don't cock back and kill your buzz. Another sodden morning, another rent check due. In another life, someone skins a plum, frowns, then spits what clings too tart and tight to the seed. But I am not cruelty-free. I do not offer a gluten-free option. I won't talk like a pirate. I won't pump up your volume, get wasted. I will not have sex with you at Burning Man. I won't dig your hip hop, save the planet, this badass rally, talk Chinese, support your Greenpeace, stop eating sushi, forsake animal proteins, watch Glee, ride fixies, donate to indie, go, yo, let go your fucking ego. I start my Honda to my favorite freezer section. Soft shoe past the okra and peas, waltz by the Breyers caramel praline crunch. You miss Chick-fil-A? I'm my own guilty pleasure. The security guard, the cashier, even the cart with one stuck wheel cannot stop the revel of my nighttime promenade. 20 years ago, the astrologer would not suspend his disbelief. 10 years ago, The composer could not harmonize transgender with friend. 5 years ago, the weaver unraveled a rainbow at my name. And someday my car won't pass the smog test. I just found out I might go blind. Each day I take 5 pills to make me a little more like something that folks say I will never be. Someone may mark me with bad weather and omens. Judgment might thread through the foot treadle stars, yet I will still hear hummingbirds and sip my coffee and maybe sit on an ice chest, because until her saviors go away, until her spirit guide stops reciting every reason to kneel before the next muscle car blowing down the street, one can ponder which witch she has become, yet how completely she still will give her dance to love. To pull a sweater from my closet, shove my cell phone in my purse and march for groceries with a 5-minute stop at CVS. The composer may abandon his backbeat. The astrologer may withhold his gaze. The weaver may sever the threads of youth, threads of self, even as she cuts another inconvenient thread, unable to grasp why dust shall never settle upon the soul. Katrina, Miss Satomi, what do you smell? What do you smell? Miss Satomi repeated. Smell. Katrina took a breath. There was the smell of donuts, the smell of grass, car exhaust. Some kids must be smoking weed. The grass was wet in some places. She could smell the mud, and then she took another breath. With the smells came other senses, colors. The sounds came back. She could feel the evening cool against her. Miss Satomi squeezed her hands firmly. Now you are going to play to these nice people some music, and they're going to hear you. You're just sharing your music with others. That's all. Sharing. Katrina looked into the park at the people enjoying the summer evening. Some were smiling. Many were peeking at their cell phones, and some were drinking boba. Few were eating donuts. Gradually, her body became hers again. She practiced some scales. She repeated a few bars of Shradiak. She thought of the first time she played in front of Miss Satomi with no one else listening but ducks. Shizuka Satomi looked at her phone. She patted Katrina gently. Astrid says it's time. The MC looked at Katrina and paused. Our next performer is a young violinist. Well, who knows these days, right? He laughed awkwardly. The MC's attempt to cover his error only made things worse. The crowd was tittering. What did that mean? But isn't she wearing a dress? A child spoke in Mandarin. Katrina didn't quite understand, but it sounded like something like, is that a boy? Shizuka is furious. This was unacceptable. She glared at the organizers, but they too were horrified. None of them had anticipated this. Shizuka's face began to sting from the sweat. The pads in her dress seemed to be slipping, and she just knew that her shoulders were standing out under the stage lights. She tried to breathe, but drew back as soon as she felt her belly push against her fabric. She glanced off stage. She could run off now. No one would care. Then a voice, loud and clear, resounded over the din. She's a girl, you dipshit. It was as if a giant bucket of ice water fell over the crowd. Of course she was a girl. Astrid smiled. Katrina blinked. Ellen Seidel turned in shock to the person who had yelled this, because this was her rival, sitting next to her. Tamika? Shut up! Can't we just hear her play? Yes. Please, everyone, welcome Katrina Wen, the MC finally said. Katrina tried to find friendly faces in the crowd, the ones Miss Satomi had always said were there, but to her horror, all she saw was a wall of black. Shizuka noticed the predicament immediately. She had not warned Katrina about stage lights. Now, the spotlights look great to the audience, but when a performer looks into the light, The light is blinding. Instead of an audience, one will see a wall of dark. Furthermore, everyone beyond that darkness is watching your every move, so there's no way you can just hide. Katrina's eyes would eventually adjust, but for now she was on her own. Katrina could hear the audience muttering, talking, breathing. So many people, there were so many people out there she couldn't see. Her arms were numb. Her hands felt like they belonged to someone else. She felt like she was far away. The wind blew and something flew into her eye. Katrina flinched, and Astrid mistook that flinch as her signal to begin. No, wait! Instinctively, Katrina's hands leapt into motion, but the music kept coming, and unlike practice, there was no chance to start over. Crap, that was a down bow. Keep going, keep playing. No, her teeth clenched as she misplayed another note. Katrina could sense some older people rustling in their seats, probably getting up to leave. She knew what they were thinking, right? Who is this junk? What is this junk? Who is this freak? Soon parents would depart as well, saving their children's precious classical ears from being corrupted by something as vulgar as gaming music. She felt herself twisting back to being abused in the shower, the woman on the bus ride, her father kicking the door. She was a dumbass, a tranny. She was worthless, ugly. And then Katrina remembered. Smell. What do you smell? Boxes of donuts, the grass, car exhaust, kids smoking weed, fresh rosin gently dusting her bow. Oh, the perfume Astrid had lent her, wafting off her skin and hair, her beautiful shimmering dress. And suddenly she was back on stage. She was okay. She was in trouble, but she was playing. Katrina relaxed her wrist and Aubergine instantly responded. Good, I still have technique. Her legs steadied. Yes, she still had her legs. Kevin called them gorgeous, hadn't they? And Aubergine. She let herself smile. Gradually, her eyes became used to the spotlight. She looked into the park and something glinted at her. And there was one face, a little boy with glasses, head propped up on his hands, watching intently. The child was looking at her as if she were an angel. And then, in a voice somewhere else said, oh shit, I know that game. She's playing Axiom. Darkness. Katrina, all the night she had spent listening in the dark. But where she had been alone before, now there were others, right? And they were listening, right? And they were feeling a friendly face, a supportive glance. Whether or not she could see them, Katrina knew they were there. In Axiom, mathematical and logical concepts were personified as non-player characters. Working with them created the laws of your universe, and from there one could build ever more elaborate and involved realities. The music to the game reflected this, developing, curving back on itself, creating new complexities that spun and developed in turn. Katrina imagined that there would be a time on stage where she would sneak a peek at Astrid for reassurance or off stage to Miss Satomi for strength. But instead, Katrina focused on that boy with glasses. And next to him was a girl with a Pokeball hanging off her violin case. Katrina heard an old woman collecting plastic bottles. And there was another one feeling too awkward in her flowery dress. From the darkness, Katrina willed her violin to build that world. Let there be light. Let there be colors, then calculus and molecules and starlit vistas. Let there be home after home after home after home where no one gets yelled at and no one gets beaten. You can do this, Katrina's song seemed to tell them. This is your universe, your creation. Please don't be afraid. Let's not be afraid anymore. A few more people stopped to listen. Some kids rode up on their bikes, a young couple with a baby stroller, a man holding a dirty jacket and a lunchbox. Katrina played for people who loved Axiom, for people who never played Axiom at all. Katrina played for people who never thought they had played any game. As she played, she thought of a helpful voice, bringing clothes she wanted, a friendly face selling Cinnabons. This world is for you and for you and for you. And she hadn't even noticed when she stopped playing. Katrina looked at the audience, then at Astrid. And finally she realized The music was over. Then the crowd started clapping. It felt like sunshine. It sounded like rain. She looked for her teacher, but Miss Satomi was not in her seat. She started walking off stage to find her, but Astrid grabbed her by the arm. Katrina, thank your fans. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryka. Such an honor to have you here. And Ryka is one of the poets that we honored last year with a banner. So if you are driving down Santa Monica Boulevard and look up, you may see her face. Thank you for bringing in, I mean, so many things in there. I think the questions of what genre means, the questions of autobiography versus character and how those things relate to each other. And then just in this combination of poets that we have here, you know, folks who have brought books and who are reading from books, folks who come from a more performance background who are really fitting into more of a spoken word tradition or an oral tradition. Thank you all so much for opening up this space and for taking us so far and for bringing us home. For folks who are listening in, the attendees, we have the Q&A function. I'll be able to see your questions. And we have about 20 minutes now for conversation. And so I'm really excited to open things up. And I'd love to open a little bit of a space for the writers who have read tonight to be able to respond to each other and be able to share with each other things that you loved, things that surprised you, all of those things. And I'll couch that in sort of a broader question, I suppose, which is just coming to the title of this event, trying to kind of create an umbrella for the distance that we've traveled and thinking about this idea of trans-future poetics and what that means to you, what you've heard of that tonight and where we go from here. And just for the sake of being on Zoom and passing things being difficult, I'd love to offer that we can go in the same order as the readers. And then if you are bursting with things to say and you want to say them, just go ahead and unmute and we'll be mindful of that and you can jump in. So I'll start with you, Simba, if that's okay. Any shout outs, things for other readers, or this question of what does the title of the event Trans-Future Poetics mean to you?
Yeah, wow, like I love being in these spaces and I'm super excited. Like as much as the pandemic like did to us in a negative way, like it opened so many different platforms and like I guess we thought about new ways to communicate with each other. So like I've met so many different folks and heard from so many different folks from like around the world. So I love being in spaces like this. First of all, Josie, I love your voice. Like, I mean, of course your writing was beautiful, but I'm just like, the whole time listening to you. Ryka, oh my goodness, Ryka the rapper, like the rhythm, oh my goodness. And you know, we talk about like what is genre, and we talk about like how our words can be music, right? And like when you're reading a book, like I always hear the music when I'm reading, so like I super appreciate your voice. Ava, like I said, spirituality is like my favorite thing to like play with when it comes in spoken word and poetry, just because you know there's so many limits folks put on it. So I appreciate your pieces as well. As far as like the whole like what I feel about the topic of tonight, Trent, what's the question? Like just can you ask the question again, Brian?
Yeah, what can we, when we say trans-future poetics, what can that mean?
Everything, right? This idea of future, and especially when it comes to like poetics. I've been playing with what poetry means to me. And as if you've followed like me on social media, you can see like I've just slowly but surely gone away from going by Simba the Poet and just going by my name, because there's so many different like barriers folks put like on my art or on our art, like as far as like what a poet is supposed to be. Where's your MFA? Where's your, all of these things. And they're taking away like the futuristic part of it, right? And like this, I don't know. Yeah. So I think it's all the things. I noticed like also there's like in the title there was like something about politics in it as well.
There's the quote that we had, "Poetry is a weapon loaded with the future," the Gabriel Celaya quote.
Yeah. Boom. Yeah, all the things. I think there's no limit to it. That's what I think this whole event is. The title, the focus of tonight is like there's no limit to this art form, right? So yeah, for now, that's all I got.
Thanks, Simba. I want to talk to you about your baby, but we'll come back to that. Oh my God. And go ahead, anyone can jump in, but otherwise we'll go by the order. So go ahead, Ava.
Yeah, wow, I've got multiple different bookstore websites in New Haven open right now, trying to see who carries all these books, because that was outstanding. And I'm just very happy to be in this group. It's an honor. And as for Trans Future Poetics, I mean, sci-fi is something that I haven't engaged with as much as I thought I would. I wanted, when I was like 9 or 10, I wanted to be a physicist. Before that, I wanted to be a marine biologist. I got to college, like first class I took was on astrophysics. And yet I just never really let science fiction into my writing for some reason, or even just concepts of future. I was always been writing about what's going on to me in the now. So I approached the idea of future and poetics since it's hard for me to envision future. I have a bad time thinking so far ahead. So I thought, okay, what was future to me when I was 10? What was future to me when I was like 14? What was future to me when I started transitioning? What was future to me? What would it mean for me to know that this is future and that the future is happening? And so I like that angle. I want to explore the future from now a lot more. I think I need to stop getting so caught up in my past and just, get on with my life. But I really, it was when you approached me in October, it was like sci-fi and poetry. That's difficult, That it's not something I think of either, because it's like, okay, how do you, in such a short art form, especially, with 15-minute time slots, how do you create a world, without getting everyone lost? So it was difficult, but I really enjoy what I came up with. I really enjoy what everyone else put together. Yeah, it was a really fun experience for me.
And I love, Ava, that you're a classicist. Like, I think that's something that's so rich to add to that discussion, that you are studying like ancient texts, and that's, like you said, the view of the future from childhood, that's kind of a portal as well. Josie, do you want to chime in? So again, reacting to other poets, and then also reacting to sort of the central conceit of the event.
Yeah, a delight to be with you all, and a delight to be part of this conversation. I think something that is remarkable about trans people, amongst many remarkable things, is our need and our insistence on authoring ourselves, authoring our own futures. It's something that we have to do very actively. We have to imagine a self for ourselves that is not the self that the world expects or sees. And then we have to bring that self into being through acts of will. And I think the same is true for our science fictional imaginations, that many of us live in a world now that is quite hostile to our existences, that throws up barriers and prejudices and laws and movements. And we will the world otherwise. We have to imagine a world that isn't this one that we're in. We have to design it, we have to dream it, we have to write the poetry of it. And through the act of authoring it, like ourselves, like our bodies, we bring that world into being in the present. It's something that I was trying to do with my book, with my own language, was to take this language that is under threat and write it into the future, and by writing it into the future, bring it into the present. So that's what I do as a trans person with myself, and it's what I do politically. I want a future world that I imagine that is different than this one, in which my life, our lives, trans lives are much more possible than they are right now, and are given a great deal more abundance than they have right now. And through that imagination, I think that helps make that world happen right now. And that's what science fiction is, really.
Wow. I think that with trans people, in some ways, I feel like we live in a world that's a little bit different than the world everybody else lives in, because everything we do just seems to fascinate everyone else or threatens them. Like we have bodily, we like use the bathroom and suddenly it's a political thing. We want to compete at sports that we love. Suddenly that's an issue. It's very, very strange that, and a lot of times in books, that the books that we write, people will say, well, that's a mashup. That's how can you do these things? We're most of the time not trying to be confrontational. We're just trying to live our lives. So I think on some levels, because trans folk are always questioning who we are, we've questioned, or we've been forced to question who we are, even when we don't want to be questioning who we are. We get all these things. The work that we produce is going to offer, I think, something very different and very necessary to the body of literature. The world is changing. In a sense, all of you, gay, straight, cis, all of you are going to, in some sense, be trans, because we're going to go to a place that we are not going to be who we are. And I think that I think the common thing to think of trans folk is, we have to take care of them. We have to preserve, it's one of those things where they need help. There will be a time, and I think it's coming very shortly, that I think many people who have trans experience will be people who have experience that will be very cogent and very relevant to the transitioning that this human race has to make. Otherwise, it's going to end up killing itself. It's going to end up like drowning in its own plastic. It's going to do all kinds of things. And, these are the expectations of tradition, and these need to be cast aside. And I think that with trans and trans poetics, what we can offer in other words, don't kill trans people. And it's not that you get trans people, you also get stories that might save your lives. You also have, that you get writers and poets who might help you deal with you being in situations where you have to question who you are. The other thing about trans poetics, before I let this go, is there are a lot of amazing trans folk and queer folks in technology, in the gaming world, who are writing amazing things where poetry is being incarnated in ways that people who are in MFA programs don't quite know. So, just keep a lookout for that. There's poetry happening all around us. And there are a lot of queer folks and a lot of trans folks who are already doing this. So if you start playing games and you start looking at things and you start feeling, for those of you who identify as our chosen family and under the rainbow banner, you feel a little bit welcome. That's not all cisgendered gay white men doing this. There's a lot of trans people working that you don't even know about. And I think it would be really nice to have some of them recognized as well. A lot of them like being behind the scenes, but I just wanted to do a shout out. There's a lot of people building the architecture of tomorrow who are trans and queer and things like that. And you wouldn't know it by the way the LGBT community projects itself. It's, there's a lot of trans folk who are working and you're never going to see them. And I think that's a crying shame because they're brilliant.
Thank you, Ryka. I love that idea of the architecture of tomorrow. And shout out, Josie. I know experience working in games. I don't know if you want to weigh in on that, but love to open that up to you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, thanks for the shout out, Ryka. My day job is in writing for video games.
Oh, really? So cool. Sorry,
Yeah,
I'll mute myself, but yay. Okay.
And also actually thank you for your own work. I've been reading your books for years, and when I think about what the science fictional imagination means for trans people, like your work is some of the work that I turn to. And of course, Ryka's not alone in that trans people have been writing sci-fi, whether that's through games or literature for decades, and we have a significant role in science fiction and in fantasy as well. And I think it's not a coincidence that we loom so large in those fields. I think another author that has been a guide for me is Rachel Pollack, whose sci-fi, fantasy, and mythical writing has been, and writing on tarot as well. Her work on sci-fi and magic helped me come into myself and helped me come into the kind of world that I wanted to be in. A world that is riven with magic, a world in which lines of power and dreaming are running through everything around us, and we can take hold of those lines of power and dreaming. Poetry is one way of doing that.
I love just kind of running back through the folks. Ava, I'm curious in your studies right now, both like your experience on a college campus as our current student in residence, but also as you're reading these kind of texts going back to antiquity, if you see threads of that running through.
It's really interesting. It's very, I study classics, particularly ancient Greek literature and language. And it's been very, especially in the process of writing these poems, it's been very interesting to just feel this sort of unconscious dialogue between what I'm reading and what I'm creating. In my class right now, we're reading a Platonic dialogue on the importance and functionality of rhetoric and the sophistry. And it's, these arguments which are kind of written to be theater and like imaginary theater that isn't actually happening, but just dialogues between these ancient people that may or may not have existed, that are being devised by this one person who may or may not have existed. And just watching these imaginary conversations take place about, if someone learns rhetoric, should they use it in every context or should they just use it? It gives me a feeling that the fact that these were written over 2,000 years ago, the sort of unease of thinking that far back into the past is the same unease that I experience looking into the future. And I recently came across a text called Metamorphoses by the Roman author Apuleius that depicts a group of who are essentially trans women, these priests of the Syrian goddess Cybele, who are ridiculed, and the narrator of the story says, these are not girls, they're catamites. They color themselves in this hideous makeup and they have gargling, crackly voices. And it's like, I guess a lot of things don't really change. It was interesting. It was because I have resigned myself to just believe that we don't really have documentation of transness in ancient Greece and Rome beyond mythology. But this is like actual documentation of a society or even a cult of trans women. And it was kind of comforting, seeing that transness extends so far back into the past and transness will extend so far into the future.
Oh my goodness. The cult. I love that.
I'm
And
going to jump in with a really delightful quick fact, which is just to tell you that the worship of Kybele made it as far as these islands as well. And in the British Museum, you can find a pair. You can find a pair of bronze clamps that are adorned with the heads of Attis and Kybele, which were used in the Galai's castration rituals, and they were broken and cast into the Thames, presumably by marauding Christians. But there was a temple of the Magna Mater in Londinium, and yeah, it was a really significant religion. I'm a big fan. So I'd love to talk to you about that another time. So yes, that worship went a very, very long way around Europe and the lands around the Mediterranean.
and getting into what you were saying about magic earlier. But Simba, we've only got like 5 minutes left, and then I've got to get things over to Cody for an outro. But talking about authorship and talking about speculative futures, and then you have an infant. What gives? How's that?
My baby is so beautiful. I don't know. I find myself like just staring at my child, like often just, I don't know, people are like joking about like this idea of like the pandemic babies and like how they're doing like this cool stuff that like we probably didn't do when we were younger. Like you got babies walking at 7 months and stuff like happening, and I'm watching it happen with my baby, and like it's so cool. And I'm always like flashing, like, and as everyone's talking, just like thinking future, and I'm often like making the joke, but not the joke, that like all of our children who have been born in the past few years are going to have like superpowers by like 2030. Like I would not be surprised if like our children are like flying and like shape-shifting and airbending and all of these things, because they are doing stuff so quickly. And just thinking about how excited I am for the conversations I will have with my child, the things I'm going to learn from my child. I'm super excited for like the calls from like school about how my child like read the teacher. Like, I don't know. It's just, yeah, that's what's happening. So like, a mixture of like dad brain and forgetting everything and like not knowing what I'm saying most of the time or what day it is or what time it is. But also just so much awe. And sometimes I find myself like, Simba, how dare you bring a child into the world at this time and in this place? And then other times I'm like, thank you for bringing a child into this world at this time, at this place. And just as like an organizer, like a youth worker. It's like I'm 26, so I'm at that age where I'm like not brave enough to be as unapologetic as like the youth that I mentor, but also like so close to them where like I'm like I'm doing something, but not as much as them. But like just watching the youth that I mentor and just all the possibilities that are going to be like available for my child. I don't know. Yeah. And we're talking about the future, and y'all said a lot about like creating the futures we want to see. I'm watching that happen with the youth I work with. And then I'm watching like my child grow so quickly and just thinking about the world she's going to be a part of creating. I don't know. Yeah. That's dad things. I can talk about that all night. So I'm gonna leave it there because yeah, it's a lot, but it's beautiful. It's so beautiful.
Dad things. Your kid's so lucky to have you. We are almost at that time. I would love to invite for any of the panelists. I know there may be specific places for people to reach out, things that you want to plug. Simba, I know you talked about mentorship, and Ryka, I know that's a big part of kind of what you're up to in LA. So I wonder if you would want to close us out.
Simba, so just in Los Angeles right now, I just wanted to make yet another plug for the Trans Latina Coalition. And they do amazing work. And remember, the future in Los Angeles is not going to be English only. So a lot of the work that they do, not just with Latina trans folk, but just trans folk, they're open for everyone. The other thing that I would suggest everybody do, it's like buy the books. And if you like the books that you like, please talk about them, because if it's the same 5 trans people in a community saying, buy this book, buy that book, it sounds a lot like a Tupperware party. What we want to do is we want to be able to reach outside of our neighborhoods and our communities. It's hard for a trans person to say, well, we'll do it, but there's a limit to saying you should read trans poetry. It's really good. It's so much more powerful. You talk about what it means to be an ally. Tell somebody that they need to read Simba the Poet. So Simba doesn't have to do that, because if somebody else does it, it's a billion times more effective. So your advocacy and your vocal support goes a long, long way.
Thank you, Ryka, and thanks to everybody who's brought us on this journey. This reading was everything I imagined and a lot more things. And I'll be thinking about it for a long time. I know it'll be available on YouTube for folks to watch and continue to share and continue. And I'll just leave you with a couple of lines from Light from Uncommon Stars. It felt like sunshine. It sounded like rain.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Simba. Thank you, Ava, Josie, and Ryka, and Brian, and the city of West Hollywood. We've been launched into the future, and we're headed there right now. And I got chills. I'm feeling good. I hope everyone had, a wonderful evening. Thanks to everyone who is joining us in the Zoom and on YouTube. There's been so much love and support throughout the entire night. It's been beautiful to see. And I hope everyone comes away with a little more joy than they entered with. And we'll close it there with a quick plug for our next event, which will be on May 4th. We're going into Explorations Beyond Borders with Lisbeth Koyman, who I saw in the audience tonight. Thank you, Lisbeth, for being here and for your praise. She said, lovely reading tonight. Thank you, Brian, and to all the readers for sharing your beautiful work. I love seeing the community come together here. Lisbeth will be joined by Miriam J.A. Chansey, Teresa May Chook, and Seba Sarwar, and it will be beautiful. So thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening. Good night.